I'm legitimately super excited for this training. I like trainings that require me to do a lot of homework. So I've been working on this training actually for a few months now. And it's just awesome to like relearn a lot of the stuff that you've learned maybe a couple of years ago or whatever. But today we're talking about body language. And I think it's, especially in our profession, it's incredibly important to be able to read people. But there are some things that I want to generally talk about before we get into like the specifics of like what to read from where. You know, we're literally going to go through the human body and say, okay, what we're going to read from different places. But there are some generalities. I'm not going to get it because it'll track me. But there are some generalities that I want to go through. So what are some things that you guys already know about body language? Yeah.
You cross your arms, that means they're closed off.
Okay, so this is a perfect example. So you're not wrong, but you're also not necessarily right. So a lot of schools of thought are that if you cross your arms or if you cross your legs, or if anything you're doing is like this, that you're not open to receive things. It's sometimes true, but it's not an exact thing. So most experts, whether they're former FBI agents, whether they're doctors or whatever, they'll always tell you to look at gestures like that in clusters. So the idea is you don't look at it just as, oh, they're crossing their arms. It's, okay, are they crossing their arms and they're crossing their legs and their chin is down and they're squinting a little bit and they're furrowing their brow. Okay, that's all of it together means, yeah, they're extremely closed off and whatever you're saying is pissing them off somehow, right? So you look at it in clusters. So to give you an idea of what I mean is that everything needs context. So for instance, let's look at the word nails, okay? Two meanings of that word, right? Wow, you have nice nails, right? The person who did your nails did a great job. Or, Marty, hand me that sack of nails because we're building a deck. So you can have the gesture that you're referring to, it needs context. So for instance, let's say you're doing a sales pitch, you've gone to a listing appointment, and for some reason it's, perfect example, it's a triplex or a quadruplex. And you can't visit the units, or you did rather, but there's all tenants in them. So they're like, yeah, look, out of my place, you know? So then you leave, and now you've got to kind of do your pitch outside in the cold. It's not minus 30, because that's not really realistic, but it's like minus 10, right? So if somebody's like this, listening to your sales pitch, they're not necessarily closed off, right? They just might be cold. So it's really important to not only just take the context of it, but also to understand that we want to look at them in bunches, not necessarily just one singular thing. What else do we know about body language? Because I'm going to debunk a couple of things before we get into some stuff.
Eye contact.
Eye contact, yeah, absolutely. This is legit. You know, we'll get into that when we because we're going to start top down. So it's one of the first ones we're going to talk about is the eyes. Some really cool things about smiling that have to do with the eyes as well, which is really interesting. But yeah, the idea that somebody may not look at you when they're lying, for instance, is, again, it's a gesture, but it's not a, oh, they looked away, they're definitely lying. That's not a thing, right? But if it's in conjunction with other things that we'll talk about, then you can make a really proper diagnostic, I guess you could call it, right? So one of the things that I was reading this book, I don't remember the name, it'll come to me in a minute, but I was reading this book about body language, and it was fascinating the way that they broke down the two genders, male and female. So one of the most fascinating things was, first of all, when you MRI scan a female's brain versus a male's brain, the areas of brain for perception for a man, there's only 4 to 6 areas for perceiving, okay? Whereas for a woman, there's 14 to 16. Wow. So women are significantly better at reading nonverbal communications, like significantly better, to the point where this is hilarious. Have you ever noticed that the majority of fortune tellers are women? Has anyone met a male fortune teller? I've never met one in my entire life, and my soon-to-be wife is she's a believer in this nonsense, and that's okay. I support that. But so what's happening is that women are incredibly good at what's called cold reading. So what that means is they look you up and down, and they make a bunch of assumptions immediately.
That are correct.
Sometimes, so 80% of it.
Intuition.
So with the studies that Harvard's done, because I'm going to cite some studies, 80% of the time they are correct. Somebody who's trained, of course. This is like people who are trained to do this, right? They can't speak to your dead relatives, but they can read you pretty darn well, right? So that was really cool. But it's also has to do with the ability to multitask, the ability to be able to say something and also be in control of your body language. Women are significantly better than men at that. For instance, the average woman can watch TV, be on a phone call, listen to another conversation, and have a coffee all simultaneously.
And do her nails.
Maybe you're above average, you can do one more thing. But the average woman can do all 4 of those things at once, whereas a guy struggles with 2 of those things. You know what I mean? So it's really interesting to understand that your nonverbal communications are 4 to 10 times more important when you're delivering a sales pitch or when you're delivering a presentation to a female. Delivering to a guy, all he's doing is listening to you. He's not really looking at how your body is. He doesn't know whether you're looking at him. It doesn't really matter. You know, usually what he says is what he says. You know, we'll get into some things looking for congruence and looking for incongruence and stuff like that. That's really interesting as well. But yeah, that was hilarious.
Yeah.
So
It's like with my
they
girlfriend.
did. Yeah, go ahead.
We're watching TV and she's on her phone. Like, are you watching the show with me? She's like, yeah,
She's-
I'm
and-
listening. I'm
yeah.
just like, what?
And she probably is.
Probably is.
Yeah, she probably is. So Harvard did a study. This is the thing I wanted to cite, which was insane. So what they did is they just pooled, I think it was 500 men, 500 women, and they had them watch this video of 2 people having an interaction. Could have been a first meeting. I don't know the details of exactly what was happening. But then they were asked to analyze the nonverbal communication between the 2 human beings. And of course, they have the study. They know exactly what they want them to see, right? And the women got it right 88% correct on average. Men, 42. We're terrible at this. But with enough reading and training, we can get better. Because not all of these people are assumed to be just kind of random pedestrians, untrained, right? Which is great, but it does tell you some stuff, which is very important. So it shows you that you have to be very mindful of your nonverbal communication when doing a presentation to a female. And with a man, it might matter a little bit less. But always be mindful of that, which is really, really interesting. So obviously gestures come in clusters. So, you know, you want to be looking at certain things. We'll get into all the stuff, but you never make an assumption just on one gesture. You want to make an assumption based on usually 3 is the magic number, which it always is, right? Once you identify 3 gestures that solidify a presumption that you have, then you can say, okay, nothing's an exact science, but probably this is it. Once you have your 3 gestures. So you want to look for congruency or incongruency. So for instance, what's a good example? Oh, I got one. You ever ask somebody like, what's wrong? And they go, I'm fine. Right? Everyone's had that happen. Everyone who's ever been in a relationship ever has had that happen. Right? Say, what's wrong? Marty, tell me what's wrong. I'm fine. You know, one of those things, you know? Everyone's heard that before. So that's an incongruence. They're saying something, but their body's saying something else, right? So let's revert back to what we're actually talking about here, which is sales, right? If you're presenting to somebody and you're asking them, and you should be asking this all the time, is do you agree? Are we on the same page? Are you following me? Does this make sense? All of the things that we're supposed to ask during a presentation, right? If they say yeah, but they're looking like this, and they've got furrowed brows like this, maybe their legs are crossed too, and they've got their chin down. They're like, yeah, makes sense. Okay, that's an incongruence. That's no good. So you know there's something you have to change, right? But if you're getting congruency, and I'm giving away some of the stuff we're going to talk about, but if you're seeing congruency, they say, yes, that makes sense, and their hands are forward, right? And they're looking you in the eye, and their palms might be up. You know what I mean? That's great. Checkbox, checkbox, checkbox. Like, sign them now. Like, they're ready. You know what I mean? So you're looking for incongruencies and congruencies when drawing conclusions. We'll get to that in a second. That's actually really, really cool. Yeah, that's actually super, super cool. So yeah, we're looking for indicators and things that tell us a story. We're not necessarily looking for things that immediately tell us everything about the person, But when you're analyzing somebody, you're looking at them usually top down, and you're making assumptions based on things that you see, okay? Now, never judge a book by its cover, right? Well, sometimes you have to have at least a little bit of a presumption going into it, okay? So let's start top to bottom. So one of the things that they tell you to look out for is you start with the hair, okay? Is the hair done? Is it styled? Is it well taken care of? Is it messy? Is it full of dandruff? Is it shaved? Is he bald? All of these things tell a story about a person, right? None of those things will indicate exactly whether they're going to buy from you or agree to use your services, but that in conjunction with everything else that we're going to talk about will, right? So, you know, for instance, you meet somebody, you're going to a listing presentation, and he greets you, and he's got hair like this, you know, he's like a mad scientist kind of thing. Like if I'm looking at him top down, and he's got hair like like Kramer, or like the scientist from Back to the Future, and I don't know, wow, Doc, wow, this is gonna bug me. It's okay. No, Marty's the guy. Marty's the younger. Yeah. Wow, this is gonna piss me off. It'll come to me. It's fine. If anybody's watching on Facebook, for the love of God, put it in the comments. Emmett Brown. Okay. So obviously after hair, where are we at? Forehead. Very important. Oh yeah, absolutely. So I'm gonna give away some of the other stuff at the end, but when you're looking at somebody's forehead, this really, outside of Botox, right? Because that'll of course, you know, alleviate those things. But when you're looking at somebody's forehead, it tells the story of the stresses in their life. And it tells the story about whether they've been angry a lot of their life, right? Or surprised a lot of their life. So it's really a fun indicator to look at. And of course this gets extrapolated with age. If you're dealing with a client that's 22 years old or 28 years old, you're not going to see anything there. That's fine, move on. You know what I mean? But if it's an older person, let's say in their 50s or 60s, you know, you're going to look at their forehead, and you should be able to tell, you know, what kind of life this person had. You know, there's a reason why they call them stress, you know, stress-induced wrinkles and things like that. So it tells you kind of what kind of life they've been through. So you can make some assumptions. And this is a cold reading, guys. What we're teaching is basically a cold read. So when this fortune teller sees you and they see all these freaking lines on your forehead, they're going to assume you've had a tough life, haven't you? It's been rough for you. I see that it's been rough for you. And you're like, it has been rough for me. You know what I mean? And she just read that from your forehead. You know what I mean? So really, really fun stuff. So again, this is not an indicator of whether this person is going to list or buy with you, but it is an indicator of who this person is and how you can, you know, properly present something to them so that it'll be the best received possible. Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah.
So moving on from forehead, where are we at now?
Eyes.
Yeah. So this is really cool. So if you're close enough to them, obviously I can't tell looking at Susie right now, but if I was presenting to her, I'd likely be closer to her. And the main thing you want to look for is dilation. That's number one thing. So if you show them something, and this is like, obviously this is like next level sales shit that I don't expect everybody to just immediately implement, because this is hard. This is like level 4 sales shit. You know what I mean? But if you show them something, like if you're showing them the page of our listing presentation with the pro media, and it's got the drone on it, and it's got, you know, the 3D tour thing, and they're coming off of an experience, let's say they're an expired listing of nobody doing anything like that, you're gonna look at their people's, they're gonna shrink a little bit because they're excited. They're like, oh, that's awesome. That's really cool. You know, or you can simply just ask them, like, what are you looking for in your next realtor? And they say, well, we're looking for somebody that's, you know, really hungry. We want somebody that's gonna pound the pavement. Somebody's gonna get my home sold. You know? So then you go and you say, listen, we're a full team. Everybody here picks up the phone every morning to find you a buyer for your property. Look at their eyes. And you see if they come down just a little bit, you're like, yes, awesome, well received, checkbox, move on to the next one. You know? So this is like, again, really next level stuff. Rapid blinking usually indicates stress of some kind. So now, again, there's exceptions to every rule. I was at a sales course called Bold, and there was this one woman there. She was with an office downtown, and I swear to God, this is how she would present. This was just who she was, right? So this is something I would just disregard if I was cold reading her. But she would just be like, And so my clients would tell me that it was, you know, and then she would go back to normal when she was talking to normal people. It was really weird.
So weird.
But that's just a quirk. I'm gonna throw that aside. You know, I'm gonna continue with the cold read, right? So the other thing with the eyes, I'm gonna put the tired indicators as well, right? So you want to look for those big old bags under people's eyes. Obviously, like women typically cover that up, but men you can't because we don't wear makeup. So when it comes to men, you can see kind of what kind of life they've lived and what kind of life they're currently living based on the giant bags under their eyes. So if I'm let's say I get a call from one of my flyers saying, yeah, I would be interested in a cash offer on my property, and I arrive to this person's house and he's got bags like this under his eyes, my sales pitch is going to be not necessarily about the money. It's going to be about the idea that he can rip this Band-Aid off and get the job done right away with no stress, no hassle. Leave everything in the house. We'll take care of everything for you. You know what I mean? And that's how I would cater that, right? So if for a listing presentation, on the side of the listing presentation, your listing presentation should really be catered to the fact that you're going to handle everything, right? A to Z, it's all going to be you. You know, and then the guy who's obviously really tired is going to be like, awesome, finally, somebody who's going to take care of me, right? So that's the eyes. After that, there's only one point with the nose. There's a couple of points. Well, I hate being recorded sometimes. So there's one that's funny, and then the real one that's kind of more real. So let's start with the funny one. The one that's funny is, I don't know if you guys know this, but if you encounter any elderly people with blue noses, what does that mean? They're blue. They're blue noses. Yeah, it's not necessarily a full-blown alcoholic, but it's somebody that's been pounding the booze for many years. Yeah, so it's caused because the alcohol like bursts little blood vessels all over their nose with years and years of continued drinking, and so usually if you see an old Irishman, he's got a fucking blue nose, man, super blue, and yeah, this is a huge indication. So yeah, it's crazy. You're gonna notice it now. Now that I've told you, you're gonna notice it on everybody. Yeah, you're gonna see now at the bar. Yeah. Oh, you don't even need to tell them to show you. It's like I could tell, like from our distance, I'd be able to tell. From our distance, for sure, I'd be able to tell. Now you're gonna start seeing it more that I brought it up. Yeah, it's purpley bluish. Yeah, exactly. So the other thing to look out for is if you say something that might be a little bit, shall we say, controversial. Let's say you're handling an objection, okay? And let's say you handle it a little bit aggressively. They say, well, is there anything you can do on your commission? You say, absolutely not, right? And you look at them, something can happen with their nose. I call it the bunny nose, where they go. Yeah. Yeah, it's like, the exaggerated expression is, right? But the really quick one is like, this is more like a micro gesture more than a large one. But if you can actually spot them, if you're looking at them, you should always be looking at the person, right? I was watching this video the other day because I was prepping for this training, and this guy was analyzing poker players, and he's like, why are they looking at their cards? That should be the last thing you look at. You should be looking at everybody else first to identify like what they do when they see certain cards. Then look at your cards, because you've already analyzed their reaction to all their cards. So I was like, wow, this guy's sick. I never want to play poker with him ever, right? So yeah, the nose one, just really fun. So now, what's after nose?
No, wait, when people flare their nose, that's another thing too. Like.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, I didn't read a ton on that. I don't know. I wasn't privy to that.
I know for myself when it happens. Like when I do that.
So for you, what does it mean for you?
No, it's not when I'm upset. It's when somebody's like exaggerating and I don't really like 100% believe.
Oh, that's interesting.
Like it just happens. So
I think it's more eyebrows for you. That was great. That was a big eyebrow move.
But
I can do it. You're like,
no, but I feel like sometimes it happens.
So the mouth there's a bunch of key indicators with the mouth that's really important. So nervousness is 99% of the time indicated with your mouth. So have you ever seen people that bite?
do it all the time.
I do it all the time. And I always do it when I'm in a situation where I may be anxious. So like I'm waiting at the airport in the Cell Park area, waiting for, Kako just called me. She's like, yeah, I don't know how I'm gonna carry all this stuff. I've got the baby and 3 pieces of luggage and oh my God, I'm freaking out. So she's like imparted some of that stress onto me and I'm sitting in Cell Park knowing I can't help. Like she's beyond the security gates. I literally can't help. So I'm there like picking things, biting things, you know what I mean? Like, and we're gonna clump all that together. It's like if you see somebody fidgeting at all, it's usually an indicator of anxiousness or stress because that's how people like feel better about it. Nail biting, picking at their cuticles, biting their lips, stuff like that. Yeah, all that's super, super important. Yeah, sucking in the lips or pressing them like this, like.
Not a good thing.
No.
But can that be also taken as like analyzing something?
Yeah, sometimes, but usually they're analyzing if that's the context. It's mostly again, nothing that I'm talking about here is an exact science. They're just all designed to be indicators for you to cluster together in sets of 3 to bring you to a educated conclusion, not a foregone easy like 100% conclusion, right? So in that case, if they're analyzing something like, they're probably not trusting what they're seeing.
Okay.
Something's happening there.
If they're more open, like they have the facial features that be more open.
Yep.
To combine with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Usually there'll be other things. This is awesome. This is so fascinating. So in the section of the mouth, we're going to talk about smiling and how insanely important it is. So there's so many things that I want to talk about with smiling. It's so awesome. So smiling, it's such a deep science. There's so much that has gone into the power of smiling. So I was reading a Tony Robbins book a few years ago, and he was talking about how he took a group of actually clinically depressed people, and what he did was he just brought them into this room with a big mirror in front, and just said, your only thing you're allowed to do right now is stand in front of this mirror and smile for 10 minutes straight. 10 minutes is a long time, guys. Like that's a long time to smile. Right? And they were monitoring their everything, their body, their mind, they were monitoring everything during all this process, right? And it was a game changer, like an absolute game changer. A bunch of them were obviously, you can't just cure something there's a chemical imbalance in your brain, obviously, but some of them it did. Not all of them, but some of them it did. These people were clinically depressed and they just said, hey, smile for 10 minutes straight. And the results were insane. Like I was reading, I was like, I almost don't believe this, except that he cited all the studies at the end, which of course I went and fact checked. I'm like, holy shit, this really happened. This really happened.
Fact check for drugs.
Yeah, I did. Listen, I love the guy, but he like dabbles in a lot of things, so I just want to make sure, But yeah, awesome. Smiling, so freaking important, and it's such a great indicator. Smiling's awesome because if you see somebody and you smile, what do? They smile back every fucking time. Like 9 times out of 10, they're gonna smile back, which is awesome. Unless they could be a little psychotic if they don't. But yeah, so you want to smile because you're gonna get the smile back. It's a powerful thing to do. It's one of the reasons that when you're in a sales situation, you nod all the time. You smile and nod. You're like, yeah, absolutely, right? Yeah. Like so if you're on the page, let's say you're talking about commission. You're like, we charge 5%, we charge 6%. Yeah. We charge 5% for the services we offer. And so yeah, and obviously I'm doing an exaggerated version of that, but a very small head nod with a smile goes a long way. You're inferring something onto the other person, which is really, really, really awesome. The other thing is, when you smile, there are 2 muscles that are engaged in your face. 2 dominant ones. Obviously, there's like 50 billion muscles in your face, but there's 2 dominant muscles that engage when you smile. However, there's only 1 muscle that engages when you fake smile.
Ooh.
This is where it's awesome. So if you make a joke at a sales presentation and you don't see, I can't even do it. If you don't see the crow's feet, that's not a real smile. The real smile, the muscle that engages for a real smile, is the one that creates the crow's feet.
Yeah,
Yeah, the one that raises you. No, it's actually, it's the thing that pulls your, sorry? No, a real smile.
I don't smile much, and I got a bunch of crow's feet, so.
Yeah, so
the big smiling.
obviously everything's the 80-20 principle, right? So probably 20% of people that doesn't apply to. But for the majority of human beings, if you're doing a real smile, that's the crow's feet. The fake smile, there's no crow's feet. Because you're not engaging the muscle that's pulling your eyes back. The one that squints your eyes and
Squints your eyes, yeah.
you see what I mean? Like so. I probably look so stupid, but I don't care. You know what I mean? Let's see you squint your eyes like that. Now that's a real smile. Because you're like, that's hilarious. Yeah, Luke's doing it. He thinks that's funny. That's awesome.
There we go.
So, when I read that in the book I was reading about body language, I was like, that is the coolest thing I've ever read. It was awesome. It was so freaking cool. Fascinating too, because I never knew that there was any kind of difference between that. But these people who did this study, first of all, it was the original study was done in the 1800s. This guy this is really gross, but I don't care. He peeled the faces off of beheaded people in the 1800s to study their face muscles, to see which ones engage when certain things happen. So he'd like pull their whatever back to see, okay, which one does this. He'd like compare it with another faceless person or whatever. Fascinating shit. And then it got confirmed in the mid 1900s by some other doctor at some place I don't remember. But yeah, fascinating stuff. Really, really cool. But yeah, so it's the other indicator you're looking for are the crow's feet. That's a huge indicator. They don't have to be huge. We're not talking about like an 80-year-old here, but somebody who has absolutely no crow's feet, that's scary to me. So somebody in their 40s, let's say, mid 40s, no crow's feet, that's scary. It's either Botox or it's somebody that is not a very likable person. So if I'm cold reading somebody and I see a 45-year-old or 50-year-old with no crow's feet, I'm like, you're either an asshole or you're just not a very approachable person. You're not a very social person. And that's fine too. But one of those two things is likely true if a 45, 50-year-old man has no crow's feet whatsoever, right? The women with Botox, it's harder to cold read people. But for men, easy peasy lemon squeezy. So now, although the guys are not likely to cold read you, it doesn't mean you can't cold read them, right? So yeah, I found that fascinating as well. I was like, holy shit, that's so true. Because people who are smiling more typically are more social. Yes?
Yeah.
For sure. Because they're more in groups of people, they're high-fiving, they're playing video games with each other, they're having fun, they're out partying, they're smiling all the time, you know what I mean? So all of that contributes to those wrinkles that people want to fight off so badly. But little did you know, I'm gonna think you're an antisocial loser if you don't have crow's feet. So no, I'm joking around. So the next, yeah, but you know, and that's funny, right? Because I feel like women are like, I don't want wrinkles, so I'm just like never gonna have any facial expression. That's sad. Yeah. No, so the problem is, and this is like a cycle problem, is that if you don't smile, you become less approachable, and if you're less approachable, you're gonna have less friends, and if you have less friends, you're gonna have less connections, and if you have less connections, you're gonna have less success in anything that you do. So, moral of the story: if you take nothing else from this training, smile more.
Yeah.
Smile more.
If you're facing it up, you're doing well.
Yeah, if you've got wrinkles, you're good. Listen, this is why they have moisturizer, guys.
You know,
This is
Logan,
why
they
they have
say
it.
you should even smile on the phone because people can
100%.
tell
They
your
can.
voice
They absolutely can.
when you're
Oh my god, I must
smiling.
have doing that.
Yeah.
I'm always so angry on the phone.
Nobody gets to see it though.
But they can feel it. They can hear it and they can feel it.
Yeah.
Botox don't always help.
They've done so many studies on that.
That's true though. I find like you can hear when someone's genuinely like even if they're interested compared to when they're actually happy and smiling, like you can tell on the phone.
100%. Yep. So the next part, which is actually predominantly male-based, I apologize for the females in the audience, is the neck. So guys, need ventilation. You know Rodney Dangerfield? No, you guys are too young for that. But the guy who's like, oh, get no respect. You know that guy? So he's always ventilating himself. So when a man ventilates, like sometimes it's a lot more low key than that. Like sometimes it's just like one of these, or like one of these, real quick. It means he's in some kind of discomfort. Now the interesting thing is that discomfort is not always bad. You know what I mean? Like you could have put him in a place of discomfort, but you know you did that on purpose. You put him in a place of discomfort because this guy needs a fucking reality check. You know what I mean? Like let's say you have the listing, you're having a sit down about a price reduction because you agreed to his price of $750,000 when you know it's not worth a penny over $720, and you're like, okay, we got to reduce this thing to $729 to get this thing done. He's doing this. You're like, great, good, good. You know, and now you're going to combine it with some of the body language things that we're going to talk about in a minute too. We're going to talk about the most important part of the entire body when it comes to body language now, which is, in one more. No, shoulders, yeah. The shoulders are important. There's not very many things with the shoulders.
With women, they'd rather talk like shoulders facing the other person's shoulders.
Yeah.
And men, they don't have to. So that's why in most relationship, when a woman's talking and the man's not looking towards her, it's like you're not listening to me, but.
That's an interesting thing. I didn't read that, but that's interesting. Yeah, I'm gonna keep an eye out for that and see if that's founded.
There's also self-soothing when they touch their neck like this.
Yeah, so self-soothing. So I'm glad you brought up self-soothing because a lot of the stuff that we think is closed off body language is actually just self-soothing.
Yeah.
So like for instance this. You know, if you're in a social situation, you're doing this. This is a self-soothing thing. You're basically giving yourself a hug.
Yeah.
Essentially, that's what you're doing. You know, and it happens a lot in social situations. We're trying to, as outgoing salespeople, you want to try and avoid that because you want to be more approachable, and people don't typically approach somebody who's like this, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean that they're closed off, and it happens a lot in social situations because when you guys were kids, this is some crazy shit. When you guys were kids and you were in trouble, what did you do?
Cry.
You could have cried, absolutely. Did you cry right in front of the person? Probably not. What did you do?
Go in your bed.
And you went in your bed and you closed the door. Okay. Yeah. So let's say your bedroom. Let's say your mom and dad were guarding the bedroom because they knew that's where you were going to go. What are you going to do? You might hide behind something, right? You might hide behind a couch. You might hide under a table or in a closet or something. So essentially, what the studies that they've done indicate that doing this is the adult equivalent of hiding behind something.
Wow.
Right? So it doesn't mean that you're not receiving information. It just means you might be in a situation that is, it doesn't have to be double your anxiety threshold, but it's just it's a little bit over your anxiety threshold. You know, you're in a social situation, you're like, okay, I've had 5 people talk to me already. Okay. I'm good. You know, I need a little bit of comfort. So it's a self-soothe thing. Yeah. So thank you for bringing that up because I would have completely forgotten. So obviously that there are differences between where you put your hands, because we're going to talk about hands. Where you put your hands if you're going to use your hips. So if you're doing something like this is authority, right? But this thumbs out is inquisitive, right? Have you ever seen general contractors walk around like this, right? They're like inspecting your place, like, oh yeah, they got some beams there, huh? Yeah.
That's how you were standing.
But with this, it's a little bit of authority. It's a little bit of authority, and it's a little bit of.
I don't think I've ever stood like this. This is very like.
You know, and
Very aggressive.
Yeah, it is quite aggressive. Yeah, it's very aggressive.
I feel like you have to tap your foot and like shake your head at the same time.
Right?
Like,
That was my thing. My dad used to laugh at me. I would do that when I'm upset all the time. I would do like this and put my leg and like shake.
Yeah.
I want this now.
Because you were, exactly. Thank you for saying I want this. Yeah, but because you're expecting something. Something like this is usually somebody who expected something and didn't have it delivered.
Yeah.
Usually. So it's like your dad came home but didn't bring you the toy you wanted.
Yeah.
Watch out.
What? But you see how that's completely different than this.
Yeah.
You know? It's like, yeah. Like I don't even believe me that I'm having a temper tantrum from like my thumb's
this is,
out like that.
friendly,
Like
yeah.
very, very friendly. So the first thing with the hands and the most The easiest thing is when you're having a meeting with somebody, are their hands forward or are they back? So that's like the number one thing. Is if they're forward and they're engaged with you, dude, you've got their attention. They're ready to receive any and all information that you're giving them. If they're back, if they're here or whatever, there's something you need to open them up a little bit. You have to open them up just a little bit. And so there's a couple of tricks to do that, which we'll get into in a minute. But the really cool part that I learned when I was reading this book is the palms. So what you do with your palms during a meeting. So if your go-to, and they've of course done bazillions of studies on all this, but if your go-to when you're presenting, you should have your palms open for the most part. Now, I'm not saying like this. I'm not saying like this, but like this.
Yeah.
Right? Like that.
I think I'm usually
This
like
is considered open, right? Because you're explaining something, right? Imagine you're showing something. Imagine the what do you call it? The Wheel of Fortune. You know, the girls on The Price is Right, or the guys on The Price is Right, showing off the new car. What are they doing? They're doing this. Okay. Police come, say, "Put your hands up." What do you do?
Ooh.
Not that, right? They're just doing this, and basically what you're saying is, "I'm not a threat." That's essentially what open palms mean. It means I'm not a threat. Don't worry about me. I'm here to help. I'm not a threat. Okay? Closed palms.
Just relax.
So relax closed. Usually you're listening if that's happening, but if you're delivering a presentation, you have to watch out if you have closed palms. Because closed palms, they've done, again, bazillions of studies on all this, but closed palms is usually a sign of either, what do you call it, authority or aggression. There was a very famous person in history that had a hand gesture with palms facing down.
What was it?
Oh,
Like this?
lol.
Hitler?
Oh, no, that's
This guy,
yeah.
So Hitler was very famous to have a palm gesture facing down. So a lot of people, I mean, although it was relatively recent, have not forgotten that. So palms facing down, big no-no, big no-no. Palms up always, which is really, really awesome because it is kind of like a submissive thing, right? It's very I need something from you, or I'm here to help, or I'm non-threatening.
It's like
Right?
when you meditate or you go to church, like they always say like
Exactly.
stand like
You're ready
this.
to receive.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Isn't it weird how you tell somebody to come here like this, but then you push somebody away like this?
Yeah,
Like,
because
that a big
that's more like
palms?
palms down. This is palms open,
Yeah. Okay.
right?
Okay, I see.
Palms down, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, this is well done.
so there's two things that we went through with palms open, palms closed, and the other thing you can do with your hands is point. Pointing is pretty much the worst thing you could possibly do,
Yeah.
especially in a sales situation. It's the absolute worst thing you can possibly do. The worst fucking
What
thing.
about pointing like this? I know in Malaysia and stuff they point like
Oh yeah, we're not talking anything outside of North America because I don't know any of the customs anywhere else. I didn't study any of that.
But when you point like at something on a document that you're showing them, that's no, that doesn't mean anything.
Well, I mean,
Oh
That's
no,
just, like,
no,
obviously,
no,
it's
absolutely
not
not. Just don't
aggressive,
point
it's
at
like
them.
that.
Don't be like you, because essentially what pointing means is do it or else.
Yeah.
That's essentially what that means. It
It's
means
like
do
you're
it or
above
else.
them. Like
Marty,
you're not-
Marty literally just did it
Yeah.
inadvertently.
What?
He said sit. He was talking about a dog,
oh,
right?
yeah.
What does that mean? It means do it or else.
Yeah.
Because all of our mental programming is all based on all of the stuff that's been going on since the dawn of time, right? So since we've had dogs, I don't know when that was, maybe like the 1500s or some shit like that. But sit,
Yeah.
always did the point. You know what I mean? So anybody who points at me, I'm like, fuck, why is this person pointing at me?
Yeah, true.
You know what I mean? It's very aggressive. Or if anybody remembers school, you got pointed at, your heart starts going real quick, right? He's like, oh shit, what if I don't know the answer?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So then it's another reason, just so you know, this is an example of palms up. When I'm presenting, I'm always like this. Whenever I'm doing anything, my hands are always like this. Always, always, always. Because it's just like, hey, don't worry, I'm non-threatening. Guys typically will have hands in the pockets. This is also a big no-no. Yeah, because they don't know what's in your pocket. You know what I mean? I'm not saying it could be a gun, could be, but people's minds are, oh, I don't see their hands, I don't trust them.
But I heard that's where shaking hands started, actually. It's to show that you don't have a gun and you're non-threatening. You're like, here are my hands, you know, like.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Dude, we could literally do an entire training on shaking hands. I on purpose left that out. It's part of the book, which I'll text you guys all which book all of this came from. But yeah, it's fascinating stuff. The handshake thing is really, really important. If I was gonna like break it down into a couple of sentences, I would just say you want to shake hands with people who want you to shake their hands. Okay, that's like the main thing I drew from the book. Is like you don't want to shake hands with somebody that doesn't like you or doesn't trust you because you're forcing them into an interaction with you, and it's not a good thing. It's better to nod at them.
But everything's messed up now because of
Yeah,
COVID.
nobody wants handshake.
Yeah,
It's
now
so
there's
awkward
some
when you
bumping
go,
and
you're like-
everything. Yeah, absolutely. So now that we kind of understand the cold read process, what are some things that we can translate into sales? So one of the things that I've always found really, really powerful, and please don't take this the wrong way. Try not to make as many jokes as I hope you guys won't. But touching appropriately during presentations is so important. So, but I'm going to teach you guys how to know whether you did it right. Okay, so Susan, come. You're going to be my example. Now, imagine we're sitting down.
Okay.
So even though we're standing, imagine we're sitting down. And I'm showing you this. I said, okay, so you see this here? It says sold in how many days? What does that say?
7 days.
Exactly. Perfect. You know
I
why
find
that
that
was?
women can't
it's
do
like a
that.
compliment. You know why that was perfect? She looked at me after I did that. She said, "Yep, exactly." Thank you, Susan. So,
But if a woman did that to a man, it would
A
be.
woman can't do that
I
to
don't
a
think
man.
it would be taken the
If-
same.
You could do it to a
Yeah.
woman, but not to a man.
yes. So a guy can do it to another guy,
And to a woman.
depending on the guy. All of this is based on situations, right? So everything has to have context. But the important thing is when you want to drive. Do I have to separate you guys?
No, it's like,
And if you want to drive a point home, nothing does it better than a playful touch. Nothing does it better. You say something, you want it to really go in their brain, touch them. And how you know if you fucked up is, watch this. Touch my arm. And I look at him, I look at his hand.
Or you like move.
Oh my God, that's so
The
true.
most
Something you
important
guys
thing
do,
is
yeah.
to watch their eyes. The first thing I looked at when I touched you was their eyes. I wanted to make sure that you didn't look at my hand. It's kind of like, you know the gif, Ryan Gosling from the, what's that movie? Nope. Nope. The one where he suits up with Steve Carell. Yeah, crazy stupid love. So you know when he looks at Steve Carell when Steve Carell's dressed like an asshole, he's like. So it's like that. If you touch somebody and they give you the Ryan Gosling up and down, like you did it wrong.
Yeah.
You did it 100% wrong. And it doesn't mean you shouldn't keep trying, not to the same person.
Yeah,
But
keep touching
keep trying, like, change your approach on the next appointment that you have.
Pick the right
So,
moment.
You have to pick the right moment. And usually the right moment is when you really want to drive a point home. So for instance, if you're showing off your statistics and you say, has any other agent or broker shown you anything like this? And they say no, you say exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's really good.
That's exactly it. You know what I mean? So
Should you ever touch the wife when the husband's there, or you just focus on the husband?
yeah, it's, you know,
I wouldn't.
if it's a playful touch, I would.
It's a little.
I would.
If it's like the wife, it makes the husband feel a little more than the woman, I feel like. You know, like I feel like if like somebody touched me while Tim was around, I feel more uncomfortable because I feel bad for Tim and what he's gonna
Well,
say.
it's like a touch.
You know?
It's not like.
No, remember guys,
Just a moment.
here, Marty, come up here 2 seconds. So, the example of like a fine, playful touch is one of these.
The elbow.
Yeah, elbow. Elbow, forearm. Hand, never.
Yeah.
Shoulder, unacceptable. This range, right here. This is the range. So of course, if I was presenting to you and Tim was there, I'm not going to be like, and you see what we're doing here, Susie? You know, like, and meanwhile Tim's like, excuse me, motherfucker. Like, you know what I mean? Like, obviously that's so inappropriate. You have it's literally a microsecond.
Yeah.
It's just honestly, it's the equivalent of.
Yeah.
It's the equivalent of, here's the attention here now,
Yeah.
you know? That's all you're doing. You're just commanding attention for a specific moment. So it's not, the fact that I called it a touch, maybe it's not even, should be classified as that.
Yeah.
but it's fascinating stuff. So obviously touching can really like bring something home during a presentation, and then understanding when people are uncomfortable, right? Oh, there you go. There you go. Okay. Yeah, of course. Oh, we know each other. But understanding when people are uncomfortable, I think, is really, really important. So hopefully, with the guides that we just went through, we're going to be able to understand whether somebody's uncomfortable. Their leg might be shaking. You know, they might be like this. They might be like this. Maybe the guy's ventilating a little bit, or whatever. You know what I mean? So then you understand they're uncomfortable and understand why they became that way. And you're like, oh shit, I said this. That's what maybe triggered that third gesture, clustered into shit. This guy's uncomfortable. You know, now I got to change something. I gotta revert back to something that's gonna, you know, get him happy, and I'm gonna touch him.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hit his arm one time. You know. So you said something.
Another question. So in the listening presentation, let's just say you see that they're nervous or like whatever. Do you tell them like, oh, like you call them out on it,
No.
or do you just try and pivot?
No, so I think there's a fine line. So I wouldn't be like, I can see you're nervous.
Yes.
Like, no, I wouldn't do something like that.
Okay.
But I will say, like, hey guys, just so you know, my goal today is to make sure that we all leave really happy with the outcome. And again, and I reiterated this on the phone, it's all well and good for me to get your sale of your home. But my goal here really is to do an amazing job for you to earn the referrals of your friends and family. Does that make sense? And they say, yeah. And then they might more calm down
Or you
that
could
way.
see like,
So I'll work around it. Based on the knowledge, I'll work around it. I will never call them directly. You know what I mean? Like if somebody's obviously like, you know, like very like closed off, kind of angry, shit like that, I won't be like, well, I can see you're pissed off. So what do you want me to do about it? I probably won't do that.
If someone said that, that'd freak me out. I'd be like, don't, like, now I'm like,
Yeah,
I don't
I
even
feel
know
like
how
we're
to
reading
act.
it, don't we?
yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so you weave around it, bob and weave, you know? But yeah, I think understanding when somebody's ready to receive information is just as important. So understanding the cues that would lead you to believe that they're ready to receive. So maybe their palms are open, their palms are forward, you know, they're engaged in the conversation, you know what I mean? You've asked them to read a couple of things. Pro tip as well, if somebody is closed off, like let's say Marty right now. Here man, grab that, thanks, open.
You opened their hand.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He didn't even realize it. Yes, that was awesome. That was awesome. So yeah, no, if it's the easiest trick in the book is if they're really closed off and you need them to engage, hand them something.
Huh.
You know, whether it's a pen, whether it's a contract to look over or something like that. Get them opened up because their subconscious works on what their physical body is doing.
That works so perfectly on me right now.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, he's listening a bit more now. That's
You read
cool.
the book and I was like, oh yeah, we want me to do it.
But yeah, so I read that and I was like, shit, I've done that before. That's cool. I like that. Understanding people's personal space is another thing. So they're going to give you indications based on where they sit. They're going to give you indications of where they're standing. If you're doing a standing presentation, hopefully you don't have to do that, but they're going to give you indications of where they're comfortable distance-wise. And I always just have the belief that you're playing in their home field. So just do what they're comfortable with.
Can you touch on why you like to sit beside them?
Oh yeah, so I don't like sitting across from anybody that I'm pitching because it's confrontational. Yeah, there were some studies done where you don't want to be sitting across from people if you can avoid it. Sometimes I'll end up sitting like, you know, at the end of the table I'll sit here and they're on either side of me. That's ideal, but sometimes the man really likes the head of the table. So I'll be across from the woman but next to the man. That's probably the ideal situation for a man. For me being a man.
Yeah, they say man in front of man is very confrontational.
Yeah, very confrontational. And like, some guys like that though, to be honest. So again, everything is based on the context of who this person is. So hopefully you've cold read them a little bit. Hopefully you've had enough conversation on the phone with them to make some good assumptions as well. And then you can know, okay, is this guy like, you know, you have these phone calls sometimes and these guys, they fuck with you a little bit. You know, they throw these things out at you to see if you're gonna knock them out of the park. And you do, they get impressed, then they bring you in. Those are the types of people that maybe you do want to sit across from because you want to show him you can go toe to toe with him because that's what he's looking for.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Now, that's not every person. Most people not, right? But it's just everything's in context, right? And then what you can do as well is mirroring is incredibly powerful. You don't want to mirror everything that they're doing, but you want to, especially if you want to open them up and you don't have a context to be able to hand them something to open them up. One of the things that I've done is if they're leaning back, I'll also lean back. And if you mimic them long enough, you can actually control what they do. So if you mimic them for, let's say, it only takes about 10, 15 minutes. And then if you lean forward, they're gonna lean forward too. It's really a cool thing because you're basically just you're creating a kind of like a symbiotic relationship between you and the person that you're presenting to, which is so cool. And then when you lean forward, they lean forward so that you can get them to receive the information that you're giving, because it's valuable information any way you slice it, right? You know, you're giving them either an evaluation on their house, you're doing our listing presentation, which is chock full of value. It's awesome. So you want to be able to show that off. You want to make sure that they're receiving it. Now, real world, how do you get better at this? How do you practice? We're talking about practice. So how do you practice it? There's really only one way of practicing it, and it's the best in the whole world. And you just watch TV, muted. You watch TV, just watch a show, but watch it muted. So if you're struggling to find 30 minutes of personal development every single day, easiest thing in the world, turn on an episode. It doesn't matter what it is. This is a 30-minute episode, mute it.
Or watch something in a language you don't understand.
Could work too, absolutely.
But
The
you
only
can still do it
problem with
too.
that is you're gonna get some
you
things
get
that aren't really
tonality.
pertinent for North America. So you're gonna get
Maybe,
some
yeah.
gestures and some things that probably work in the country that there is. So for instance, if you're gonna watch something French from France, it's gonna be very different than if you watch something muted that was produced and made in North America. So you've got to be careful with that a little bit, but if you have the option to watch it in a different language that you totally don't understand, like for instance, you're watching Friends, put on Friends muted. You've seen the episode 100 times anyways. You know what they're saying, just mute it.
Yeah.
And then you can literally just rock through it that way. Yeah.
I'm confused as to what the muted does.
Well, it removes the voice, so you're only looking at their body language.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you're only looking at the non-verbal communications that are happening.
So
And
I
although
just-
they are actors, if they're good actors or anywhere near good actors, then they're still going to have the body language of somebody who really is in that situation. You know, and you're going to start cueing in on certain things. Yeah.
So what helped me a lot, I think we did it when we were at KW, we videotaped ourselves pitching.
Yeah.
And then we went through it.
Yeah.
That helped me.
Yeah.
So I realized I was very like fidgety. I didn't like, you know.
In a real presentation?
No. We
Ah,
role played,
okay.
but we videotaped me and then.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, that was cool. I remember that.
I think we should.
Yeah, that was hype.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be fun. I know John was doing the Reba thing next week, but maybe we can just replace it with that. That's cool. Yeah.
So you said like 2 tips where if like they're close off, hand them something, or
Yeah.
kind of start to mimic, and maybe they'll like warm up.
Exactly.
Is there another sort of way, like if you kind of at the end of your presentation, you have nothing to hand over, you don't have to, like there's no more time. To
Oh,
sit
so the
there and, like,
handing thing is
mimic.
not an end of presentation thing.
No, that's what I mean.
That's
But
definitely a mid-presentation thing.
like if you're at the end and they're still kind of like not receiving what you're saying properly, they feel closed off. Is there something towards the end that maybe you could try to?
Don't end it.
There's no,
Keep
yeah,
going.
exactly. 100% right. Like she's 100% right. No, yeah, you literally just want to keep going. You want to just loop back. It's kind of very similar to being on the phone. You get an objection, you handle the objection, you loop back, and you address whatever you think that objection was actually about. So they say, yeah, but I don't know. Who's Montreal's elite real estate group? Okay, cool. So they trust me, they trust my industry, but they don't trust my company. Let's loop back, let's talk about it. Here at Montreal's elite real estate group, we did 200 and blah, blah, blah sales, and we did this, we do that. We're involved in the Montreal community, all this kind of stuff. And now, okay, so when can we meet? So it's kind of the same thing, is you want to ask more questions probably. Because had you addressed because they said yes to meet you,
Yeah.
right? So if they're meeting you face to face, they're expecting something. And I've always said there's communication breakdowns and there's problems in relationships when expectations are not met. The only problem with that is that expectations are rarely communicated properly. So if you didn't hit their expectation, it's up to you to ask the questions to find out what it is you need to hit. So like that's why they have questions like, what are you expecting your next realtor to do? Why do you think this home didn't sell? Why did you initially choose to be for sale by owner? You know, oh, is it just about that? Let's say they say, oh, I want that. Is there anything else, or is it really just that you're looking for? The reason you do that is you want to really, really clarify what the issue is. So let's say they're like, you're talking about for sale by owner, and they're like, well, you know, you guys charge way too much commission. Okay, so it's just about the money then, is it? They say, yeah, it is. So then you say, is that it though? Is it just about the money? Yes, it is. Great. Well, let me tell you something. if I could show you right now that I could get you more money selling with me than selling on your own, would you? And you knew that to be a fact. Would you have 15 minutes to talk about it this week? Tuesday at noon or Thursday at 4 p.m.? Something like that. So it's just asking the questions. A good presentation is not a lot of talking, guys. That's the thing. It's not a lot of talking. It's a lot of allowing them to speak, allowing them to give all of their gestures so that we can properly read and understand what part of our value proposition is the most important to that. Because we might think it's our numbers. Look, we get 100 bazillion% of your asking price. That's all you should care about. But you're talking to somebody that doesn't really give a shit about that. What they want to know is that they want to know about the speed of the transaction. They might want to know that the photos are beautiful. They might like the fact that we donate. You know what I mean? So all those things, people want different things. And it's not always cut and dry just about the money. So that's why we ask these questions. They might need it sold in a certain amount of time or in a certain time frame because they're moving to another place and they got a job lined up or something like that, right? So it's just asking all of those questions. And once you start addressing their concerns, you're going to see the body language change. They're going to start coming forward because they want to work with you. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So more questions is the answer to that. Because if you haven't opened them up by the end, you missed something. It's just unclear as to what.
Is there a time, like a body language, you can see your client when it's time for you to shut up and just get the signature?
Yeah, usually, so what I've always said is that a closing of an appointment is the natural end to a great presentation.
Okay.
So it should just feel pretty natural. So when you know you've done a slam dunk appointment, it's when you finish off and you say, well, great, all I need to get started is two pieces of ID. And they say, okay, and you just reach into their purse. That's the perfect end, But I'm telling you, I would shorten that if I'm getting the body language of they're forward.
Forward?
Yeah, if they're forward, I'm gonna probably jump to the close a little bit sooner. Similar to like if you're on the phone, you're not gonna go through the entire script of questions if they say yes to the first one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's very similar. They all play with one another. Yeah.
Now, if you're at the listing presentation and you see that they're attentive and they're forward,
Yep.
but you say, like, at the end, we want to close, you're like, let's get to the paperwork. And then they, like, kind of jump back a bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you do about that? Are they like, should you continue asking questions? Should you come back? Or should you still just try to commit to the
Question.
Yeah, so you definitely commit and you wait for them to hit you with an objection.
Okay.
This is a classic looping scenario.
Okay.
So they're gonna hit you with, well, we need to think about it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, we're interviewing other brothers, we're thinking about it, my cousin is an agent, whatever they're gonna hit you with, right? And then you loop back. You understand kind of what the objection really is pertaining to, and you loop back. The only one that isn't really a looping objection is we need to think about it. Because that's just bullshit. If they say they need to think about it, it means they don't trust you. Yeah. So you did something wrong during the presentation. Okay. But if they're open, and then you whip up the paperwork and you say, I just need two pieces of ID and we can get started, that's rare, man. The only time I don't think I've ever not closed an appointment if somebody was open and ready to receive. Okay. It's really when people are really closed off, they're insanely nervous, and I didn't do a good enough job of making them feel comfortable and safe. And then I went for the close, and they denied because I didn't do a good enough job of making them feel comfortable and safe.
I don't think I've ever seen them say no in a listing presentation when you ask them for two pieces of ID.
Yeah. It's because
Because
you're
confident at that point
Yeah,
that
there's
they're
a lot of-
ready.
yeah.
So, like,
Supernatural.
Yeah.
get it in the right moment.
Yeah. I know that when that phrase comes out, it's like,
yeah, there's money incoming.
You're pumped.
Yeah.
you're ready.
Any other questions about the body language training today, guys?
That was good.
You said that you would sit next to people like this.
Yeah.
Is that because you want to like the whole touching thing? Like if you're
That's
like,
one of the reasons, yeah, because I want to be able to have easy access to their elbow. And then the other thing is I like a collaborative effort on a presentation. I don't like to have to like turn things around and push it across the table or anything like that. I like to go through it with somebody.
Yeah.
You know, the same reason if I'm going to read to my kid, I'm not going to have the kid looking at me while I'm going through the book. You know what I mean? The kid's going to be right next to me, book's open.
Yeah.
Same thing.
I like here and here.
Yeah, I love that. Yep.
Here and here. is
Yep.
I feel like it would
Absolutely.
throw them off if like they sit down and like you come around the table and then like sit right beside them.
On the level.
No?
Oh yeah, but usually like a dining room table situation, 9 times out of 10, when you enter a house, the dining room table is set this way. It's very rare that it's set this way. So it's like this, so the head of the table is available, and the other two are there.
Yeah.
So you just wait for one of them to sit down, wherever they sit, and then I'm either taking the head, or I'm taking the other one,
Yeah.
depending on where they sit.
That's
Yeah.
Where's the place for fighting?
Yeah, exactly.
You can place it at the head of the table.
You can. Yeah, depending on how aggressive I believe the male to be. If I think that the male's like a big alpha Chad,
Yeah, he
I
should
might
sit
not
at the head.
I might not put my bag at the head of the table.
And you have to be able to identify that within the first. Like,
Yeah, I'll know from a phone call, honestly.
Oh,
Yeah, if the guy's super alpha, I'll know from a phone call.
Yeah, you
Usually,
can
if
tell.
not just like their posture.
Yeah, how they hold themselves posture wise, very, very important. Yeah, for sure.
Just with their face sometimes you find you
And-
tell.
Yeah. Cool, guys.
Like,
Well, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
This could have easily been 3 trainings. I
Yeah.
apologize for the fire hose that I just had you guys drink from, but really, really fun stuff. I'm hoping we learned a couple of little aha moments here that we can take with us. This is something that is going to be repeated, you know, probably every like 1/3 of a year. So probably in my 3-4 months, we're going to run through this again, because this is something that, you know, every single time you run through it, you grab new things and you start implementing different things. Because I know that are the 3 most dangerous words in the English language. So it's more just, okay, cool, you know that, but are you implementing it at the highest level possible?
Right.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Cool beans, guys. Thanks so much.
A lot of thoughts.
Yeah.
Logan, sorry.